Neal Adams was more than an artist. He was a trailblazer who reshaped the comic book industry. With his dynamic, realistic style, Adams returned Batman to his shadowy Gothic roots, infused Green Lantern with social relevance through bold storytelling, and redefined the X-Men with unparalleled energy and emotion. He even brought Dracula back to life on the page, proving comics could tackle horror with elegance. Ushering in the Bronze Age of comics, Neal Adams didn't just create art, he revolutionized how comics could reflect the world around us. Let's go ahead and talk more about Neal Adams, this week's Creator Spotlight. If this is the first time you're watching a Creator Spotlight, thank you for watching. You're not be disappointed with this list. This is probably going to be the longest list. Yes, you're going to see books that you know, but you're also going to see books that you probably didn't even know existed. That's the point of Creator Spotlight. So we're going to focus today on Neal Adams. Don't forget, hit that like, subscribe, leave a chat. Leave a super chat if you can. Neal Adams was a legendary comic book artist and creator rights advocate who reshaped the industry into the Bronze Age. He co-created iconic DC comic characters like John Stewart, Man-Bat, and Ra's al Ghul, and alongside writer Denny O'Neil, redefined Batman by returning the character to his dark Gothic roots and brought Joker back to being a homicidal maniac. Their groundbreaking Green Lantern, Green Arrow series introduced John Stewart and addressed social issues. Adams co-founded Continuity Associates in 1971, an influential art and design studio, and launched his own comic book company in Continuity Comics in 1984. A tireless advocate for creator rights, Adams helped secure pensions and recognition for Superman's creator Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster. You can find iconic work in titles like Batman, Green Lantern, Green Arrow, X-Men, and the Avengers, and a whole bunch of other books. His innovative storytelling and realistic art style continues to inspire readers and creators alike. Fans can explore Neal Adams' work on his official website, nealadams.com. You could also go to his Instagram page, which is still active, and there's still stuff there. He has his legacy continues on and with his family. I know his daughter Z Adams is an artist. I see her all the time, so I can't wait to share this with her. Neal Adams passed away a few years ago. I do remember doing a video on him because he actually passed away around the same time George Perez passed away. They both share that time frame. And George Perez is another great artist from the 70s. Really made a name for himself more in the 80s, but he does count as a 70s artist. Where in Neal Adams, he started his career in the 60s, which we're going to look at some of his 60s work. But it wasn't until the 70s that he kind of like became the superstar artist and creator, really, because he wasn't just an artist, creator, advocate, you name it. Neal Adams is largely responsible for giving the credit back to the creator. So he was, if there was Image Comics in the 70s, Neal Adams would have been spearheading it. That's my personal opinion on that. What's your thoughts on Neal Adams and really what you know about him?
So I picked up a few books when I started. I was into Marvel more and got more into DC and the Batman and detective runs. And that's kind of where I started to notice his name. I had the great fortune to meet him and get a book signed at a local Comic-Con here in the Falls. Really nice to talk to. I mean, when you meet somebody like that, you know, you think of 20 questions right now when you're standing in front of them, it's like, you know. So it was a really great conversation despite that. And, you know, I'm just looking forward to going through and seeing some of these covers too and just enjoying them because it is like a long legacy of great books for sure.
Mm-hmm. I had the pleasure of meeting Neal Adams several times. He was very controversial when he did shows. And granted, not many people were happy about his approach to it. because he was one of the very first guys that charged people for signatures in a time that signatures were free. He was also a businessman. He was very keen on being a businessman. He was also very like blunt, which is something that is very hard in this kind of industry to be a part of when you're doing the convention scene, where if an artist came to you showing their artwork, it better be damn good if it was going in front of Neal Adams. Because if it isn't, he's gonna tell you. He was just that type of guy, and I respect that. Now, again, like I said, it was sometimes it was a little harsh for some people to handle it. I'm gonna give you a nice story I heard about some famous artists who I wonder what Neal will tell him today.
Yeah.
Because we'll talk about it. So there was an artist in the 70s who wanted to get into the business, and he somehow managed to get a hold of Neal Adams' telephone number. At that time, we had the yellow pages. For you kids don't know, that's how we were able to find people's name instead of the internet. He had the yellow pages, and Neal Adams was listed in the yellow pages. So this guy took the yellow pages, opened it up, found his name, and decided, what the hell? Let me call him. He calls
How
Neal
many
Adams.
Neal Adams did he call?
I don't know, but he got a hold of him. He got a hold of Neal Adams, and he says, "Hey, so and so, this I'm not going to reveal who it is just yet. So and so, this is I'm an inspiring artist, and I would like for you to see my work." So I'm just envisioning Neal saying, "How did you get my number?" You know what I mean? But Neal agreed to see him, and he did see him, and he looked at his work, and he straight up told him, "Your work is garbage." So, come back to me with good stuff. So he tells him, "All right, I'll go ahead and do that." So what he did, he went back, did some work, came back. Neal still told him his work was garbage. He continuously told him that. But every time he kept coming back, he saw the tenacity of this individual. And then he finally contacted, I think, the folks at DC. I'm not sure it was DC or Marvel, but he did contact them. And he was able to get this artist a paying gig. As time progressed, this artist also became a famous writer. And he credits Neal Adams for his success. It was Frank Miller. So, now that you heard this story, what do you think Neal Adams will tell Frank Miller today?
I think he'd tell him to go back and keep working.
It's like, what the hell is this garbage you're throwing out there? I'm trying to envision a story where Frank Miller is approaching Neal Adams, and Neal Adams is telling him his work is garbage to get better. And Frank, let's be honest, he gets better.
Yeah.
Right? He gets better. He does phenomenal work. His stuff in Sin City is amazing. I'll admit to that. But now, today, looking at his style, it's like everything Neal taught him was like,
Yeah. He'd probably say stick to writing.
Let's go ahead and talk a little bit about Neal Adams' history here. His very first book was in 1960s in a company called Archie Comics, Adventure of the Fly, #4. This book's highest sale is at $850. That was back in June of 2024. Last recorded sale was $260 at a 5.5. That happened this month. The fair market value of this book is $90, while 5.5 was at $260. It's the same value. This is his first published artwork in comics. So, what's your thoughts on Archie comic?
Yeah, like, just shows you just took work wherever you could get it in 1960. I mean, how many comics were there really?
Mm-hmm. And Archie Comics doing adventure comics. So,
yeah,
and Archie still does adventure comics, but no one thinks about him. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
No one thinks about adventure comics with Archie. He does The Fly, and he got his first paying gig out of it. What's your thoughts on the price of the book?
You know what? For a very first work by that big of a person, like that big of a legendary creator, it's not bad.
Let's go to our next one. This is really the one that most people are familiar with, and that's Archie's Jokebook magazine #1. Also came out in 1960. The high sale value is 850 as well. However, the last recorded sale of this book was at $80 at a very good. It's also the fair market value. We have no recorded slabs being sold. This is his second published comic book artwork featuring a 4-page illustrated story.
This one, I can see why it's a little bit more, because it's going to have some actual interiors as well. But still, I kind of like the other cover better for showcasing his work personally.
Another Archie's book. Neal Adams does work in the book, where the other book, I think he was doing some more inks involved in the book. He did work in this book, but I'm not 100% sure what exactly he did in the book. But this is for many of them, this is his recorded first work, really. Even though Adventure of the Fly is his real first work. Now we're going to get into some more hardcore stuff with Creepy #14, 1967 from Warren Publishing. Highest sale of this book was $165, 9.2. This is way back in 2018. Last recorded sale was $15 of this book, and that is what the fair market value of this book is. 9.2 is $159. This features interior artwork by Neal Adams in a story titled Cursed of the Vampire.
Yeah, and this would likely be magazine size, I'm going to guess.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And that's not an unreasonable price either for that $15.
Oh, absolutely. $15. Very good. So it's not exactly near mint, but still, you get Neal Adams' first horror series, really. That's what it is. And a lot of people don't know he had a big hand in a lot of horror books too. He was, mostly known for his, superhero stuff. He has a good list of books that fall under the horror genre.
Yeah, and I think all that stuff was earlier on, and he's developing, and then doesn't get to the superheroes until he's like, really on his game.
Yeah, and this is a 7-year gap from 1960 to 1967. So you could tell he's been working his grind. So he's been in the business now for 7 years. And this is his first horror book. So let's take a look at our next book in this list. This one shocked me. Okay, The Adventures of Jerry Lewis 101. This book came out in 1967 for DC Comics. The highest sale of this book was $25, and that was December 2024. That was just a month ago. Last recorded sale was $2, and the fair market value is $8, and there's no recorded slabs. But this is his first published DC comic.
I searched eBay earlier today for this book, and I could buy it right now for $15, and the listings have no mention that it's his first work. That's how you know that Izzy is ahead of the game.
I did some research here, and his first book is a Jerry Lewis book.
Snatch it up now.
And then grade it, because apparently there's no graded copies. Show up in overly slab saying, here's his first book in DC Comics. It's Jerry Lewis.
Yeah. Unbelievable value right there.
Goes to show you that even the classics, the classic artists and writers, even they have books that are inexpensive.
Yeah. Because a lot of the stories are getting, the histories of the people are getting lost. So people remember the most common books that are newer, but these older kind of career forming books are kind of getting forgotten.
Now let's start getting into some more books that we're starting to know him for. And that is Our Army at War 182. Also 1967. It actually came out within a month's time of that other one. The highest sale value of this book is at $450 at a 9.2. That was in 2023. Last recorded sale was $29. Very good. That was earlier this week. And the fair market value is $24 at a very, very good. $459.2. This is his first published DC war comic, and it features Sergeant Rock, by Neal Adams.
Very cool. And you know that these books were dragged around, folded in back pockets, crushed in the bike seats. So that's showing the value. And war books are very sought after as well.
Yeah, people love war books. So, it's, I think 9.2, 450 and 9.2, that's great price for a book, right?
Yeah.
And then to find out that it is a Neal Adams did work on the book. And it also says Desert Rats. So, you can't go wrong if it says Desert Rats.
That's right.
Superman's girlfriend, Lois Lane, 79. This came out in 1967. The highest sale of this book is at $28, and that was all the way back in 2020. Last recorded sale of this book was $22 and a fine, and that was earlier this week. And fair market value is $11. There's no recorded slabs, and this is a DC comic cover by Neal Adams featuring Superman. This is his first published Superman cover.
And another great deal, and not one that probably, if you look this up, you probably did. I didn't check this one on eBay, but maybe it's not even listed as being his first time doing Superman.
It's just he only did the cover in this book, but you could see it's him.
Yeah,
like the way he draws Superman is very recognizable.
Yeah,
you could get this book for under $20. That is perplexing.
Yeah, that's a great deal.
If I see this, I'm buying it. Just to say,
good.
I got his first Superman cover.
I'll be looking for this one too. I found a bunch from last week, Izzy. I'll find these ones.
Detective Comics 369. This came out in 1967 as well for DC Comics. The highest sale of this book is at $3,000 at a 9.4. That was in August of 2022. The last recorded sale of this book was $39, and that was in January 12th. Most common is $20 for a raw and $124 for a 7.0. It is his first Batman work. So Neal Adams' first work in the Batman title, though he does not illustrate a Batman story. So he's in Detective Comics, but he's not doing a Batman story in this book.
So the next book, his first actual Batman interiors, is probably going not really as well known as this one, I'm going to guess.
Yeah, and he's doing a backup story for this one here. Our next book is the very next book, and that is Detective Comics 70, also 1967. The highest sale of this book was at $3,000 in a 9.8 this year in 2025. That is impressive.
Yeah.
Right? That is also the last recorded sale. This book has a fair market value of $29 and a fine, while a 9.4 are fetching for $235. This is considered his first published artwork on Batman, provided inks over Carmen Infanto's pencil. So he's not doing the penciling here. He is inking here.
First comic of an inker. How many of those do you keep track of?
It's still it's very impressive.
Yeah, for sure.
That first of all, someone was able to gather a 9.8 at $3,000. That's pretty.
Yeah. 1967 book. Amazing.
Brave and the Bold 75. This also came out in 1967. The highest sale of this book was $600 at a 9.6, and that was in September 2024. The last recorded sale of the book was $8, which was this week, and the fair market value is $7, $100 for 6.5. This is considered to be his first cover art done by Neal Adams, pencils by Neal Adams.
I love that cover. I think it's great.
It kind of gives me this Judge Death vibe to it as well. Maybe I'm not seeing it properly or something like that.
Yeah, I'm a huge Spectre fan, so anytime there's Spectres in the list, I like it.
Yeah. And again, another $7?
Yeah.
$8. I'll buy it.
Yep. Guaranteed I find this book. I'll find it.
Mm-hmm. Strange Adventures 207. This was 1967 as well for DC Comics. The highest sale of this book was $1,020 at a 9.6. That was in November of this past year. The last recorded sale was $35, which was this week. Fair market value of this book is at $94 fine, $660 for a 9.4. This is considered the third appearance of Deadman. It is an iconic cover that won him an Alley Award for Best Cover Art in 1967. I honestly thought he created Deadman because he's so notorious for the character. He didn't create Deadman, but he made Deadman famous.
Yeah, for sure. And I've seen this cover homaged at least a few times, if I remember right. And you can see why it won. It just stands out. Like as soon as you see it, it's a standout cover.
Yeah, and it's kind of like the start, his realistic style. Now, you could look at his work here and you could see how he influences other people that follow. I'm guarantee you see George Perez. You see this? Yeah. George Perez was definitely influenced by Neal Adams' work, as well as many artists of the 80s and the 90s, because he had this style in the 60s that just didn't exist.
Yeah.
It just didn't exist because his style is so ahead of its time. Many consider Steranko to be the first superstar artist, but Neal Adams was just with him.
Yeah.
They were neck and neck with each other.
Just a lot of great detail and shading, obviously, with Deadman. Just makes it look so great.
Yeah. He took his time. That's probably the way I look at it, where most people at that era, they were like very quick with their style. He took the time to make each character look different, feel different. When you saw someone, you knew who that was, as opposed to every character looking the same. He was one of those guys that created that. Made it harder for everybody else to follow, but
yep.
Batman 200, 1968 for DC Comics is the highest sale of 6,609.8. That was back in November of 2022. Last recorded sale of this book was $50, and that was this week in January. Fair market value of this book is at $52, while 9.0 are going for about $189. This is the debut artwork on a Batman title by Neal Adams. Iconic anniversary issue featuring Batman and Robin.
And again, if you had both those covers side by side, they would go great together because of the color combinations and layout.
Yeah, it's just a cool cover. It's an anniversary. It's the Smash issue, which reminds me, don't forget to hit that smash that like button. Batman's telling you to smash it.
Yep.
I love it. I think it's cool. I think it's awesome. Let's go to our next book. House of Mystery 175. This is him staying in his horror roots. 1968 DC Comics. The highest sale of this book was 1,680 at 9.2. That was in November of 2023. Last recorded sales value was 260 at a 5.5. That was January 7th of this year. Fair market value is $54 is very good. $159 is 7.0. This features the first appearance of Kane, who is the House of Mystery's caretaker. Also features the first appearance of Gregory the Gargoyle. Kane is a very important character in the world of Sandman. And this is his first appearance. Neal Adams is also responsible for doing Abel as well, though I don't have the recorded for that one. But I felt it was time to change it up a little bit here, where we're seeing Batman, we're seeing Superman. We're going to definitely see more Batman. We're definitely going to see more Superman. I wanted to throw in House of Mystery to show that he was still doing horror comics. And we're going to get to someone in the 70s that he was really responsible for.
I love the shading in this cover. I love the trade dress. It just is another great looking cover. You want to kind of read it by the cover alone. I like it.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. It takes you back to that era, right?
Yeah,
which is really cool. It was really great seeing postcode horror comics.
Yeah.
Here's another one that was a big deal, and that is Showcase number 80, 1969 for DC Comics. This book has a high sale of $7,500 at a 9.8, which came out in April 2024. Last recorded sales was $30 earlier this week, and fair market value was $83. They're very good, $312 at an 8.5. This features the first appearance of the Silver Age Phantom Stranger. This is his cover art. So he didn't do the interiors, but he did the cover art for this book.
Yeah, and Phantom Stranger is a character I don't know a ton about, but I do like this cover. And again, you get that classic kind of trade dress and horror cover. You know, lots of stuff going on it, but it still looks really great.
Yeah. And Phantom Stranger is one of those characters, again, similar to what I mentioned with Sandman. He's part of that horror group. So you have JLA Dark. He's part of that in some way. It goes hand in hand. You mentioned the Spectre. Him and the Spectre are kind of like buddies in some way.
Yeah.
So he was a big part of the 70s and that 70s movement. And being that we're in 1969, we're going to get into the 70s in just a couple of minutes. This is kind of the start of that momentum change where we're going away from the Silver Age, and we're, 1969 is still considered the Silver Age. We're knocking the door on Bronze Age right now.
Yeah.
X-Men 56, 1969 from Marvel Comics. This has the highest sale of $1,861 at a 9.8. It was sold way back in December of 2013. Last recorded sale of this book was at a 6.0 for $105. Fair market value of this book is $42 at a very good 9.2, $275. This features the first appearance of the Living Monolith. It's an iconic art cover. It's also his first Marvel cover. And there's something very important because he's grabbing the X-Men logo, which was a big deal then, where you have a character that was larger than life, so much larger than life that he was able to grab the trade dress.
Yeah, and I did not realize that later Dark Phoenix cover was a homage to this. I didn't know that till I saw this.
Yeah. And Living Monolith, I have a special place in my heart for the Living Monolith because my very first comic book that I purchased, like the very first comic book I purchased as part of my collection, is a comic that features the Living Monolith. So,
oh, nice.
Yeah, not much of a villain, but still, it's my very first comic, so I do have that. Now, what's important to note, as I mentioned, is that trade dress. Him grabbing the trade dress, that just did not happen. So he was going outside of the norm. He was thinking outside the box. Him and Steranko were notorious for doing things like that. That's why I say when it comes to the creators at that time, Steranko and Neal Adams had to be hand in hand, especially with X-Men, because Steranko had a hand on X-Men creating that trade dress. And here you got Neal Adams grabbing the trade dress.
I just would have loved to have been in that meeting room when this idea gets presented or how this came about. Like, you could have a whole documentary just on this one book, on the idea and the germination of it, and presenting it to the editors maybe, and them not getting it. Like, who knows what happens? Just a great idea, classic, and you're right, like way ahead of his time.
Yeah, and the thing is, at that time, they had trade dresses weren't something that you could just, you put it on a computer and you put the trade dress, right? No, they actually physically had to put these logos on the comics so that they could then get them scanned in and then start printing them. So the process alone was very challenging. And what they did was they just had common trade dresses and just slap it in. He went ahead and he did the trade and then he drew over it.
Yeah.
So, so there, there's a lot of things going on here that at that time it was like, oh man, I got to do extra work, but it was worth it.
Yeah. Yeah, this is definitely a book I'll be looking for this week. So
here's another popular X-Men book, X-Men 58 from Marvel Comics. High sale was $9,100 and 9.8 in 2020 this sold. So this was during the comic boom. The last recorded sale of this book was $115, and the fair market value of this book is at $73. Very good. while a $383 for an 8.5. This is the first appearance of Havoc in costume.
And again, you know, pushing that cover boundary again, you know, how often did you see like a style like this with the cover, the character all one color, and then everybody knew Havoc's, well, they didn't at the time with like his whole chest plate and everything. Just a great, I just love it. Just really
Yeah.
good layout.
It's definitely great. And then again, like you mentioned, the overlay of the color, the orange.
Yeah.
Another thing that was kind of iconic about it, which made it stand out, is like, oh, dude, like they overlaid the cover. He's going beyond the trade dress as well, so it's very similar to the other one as well, where he's like, nah, man, I don't care about no trade dress.
I'm using the whole thing.
Yeah, this is mine.
Yeah.
This is my canvas. So really good stuff there. Now we're going to the return of Batman with Brave and the Bold 85. This also came out in 1969 for DC Comics. The highest sale is $875 for 9.4. That was in October of 2024. Last recorded sale was $50. Fair market value of this book is at $50 at a very good, while $875 is the fair market value for the graded 9.4. This features the new Green Arrow in the look that we know and love.
Yeah, and I wasn't a huge Green Arrow fan, so seeing some of these covers is great. I just remember flipping through these old books and seeing this style cover from him because it was, you know, everywhere back when I was first collecting. There's a lot more common.
Yeah, and one of the things, it doesn't happen here, but one of the things that Neal Adams was responsible is for changing Green Arrow from being just another version of Batman to becoming a different character altogether. Neal Adams was responsible with Denny O'Neil. They were responsible for changing that in Green Arrow, which ended up making Green Arrow a more popular character. To this day, he's very popular, and it's largely because of Neal Adams and Denny O'Neil's work on him.
Yeah, agreed.
X-Men 60 came out in 1969 from Marvel Comics. The highest sale was at 9,609.8, and that was in 2022.
Unbelievable.
Right, 3 years ago. Last recorded sale of this book was $10, and that was this week. Fair market value of this book is $40, very good, while $143 at an 8.0. This is the first appearance of Sauron, alter ego of Kara Lycos. How do you feel about Sauron?
You know what? I own this book, and I'm not saying this because I own it, but this is a severely underrated first appearance X-Men book for sure. I mean, none of us can afford to pick up a 9.8 in this. Let's just be realistic. But to add this to your collection doesn't cost that much. It's a great first appearance, and I would be shocked if at some point this character is not somehow introduced into the MCU, because it's comics, dinosaurs, X-Men. I don't know.
Well, we could see an uptick of this book this week, right? And the reason why I'm saying we could see an uptick is because we are returning to the Savage Land with the Rogue series. So there could be an uptick for this book. Let's go to our next book in their list. Vampirella #1. There is something very interesting with this book. The highest known value of this book was at a 9.8 in January 11th of 2024, a year ago, for $78,000. Also, last recorded sale of this book was $998 at a 7.0. Fair market value of this book is $430 at a very good, while an 8.0 goes for $1458. This is the first appearance of Vampirella. Most notably is an iconic Frank Frazetta cover. Neal Adams does illustrate in this book, but it's not a Vampirella story.
This is a tough book to get because it's a #1. It's a first appearance. Frank Frazetta, magazine format. And then you throw all of that in, and then you put at the very bottom of it, oh yeah, also Neal Adams is in this book.
Yeah, Neal Adams is the bonus part of the book, right?
Yeah.
He's not the star attraction of this book. He's the side character.
Yeah.
Right? But I thought it was interesting to put it out because we're talking about 1969. This is where Neal Adams is starting to gain momentum. He's doing X-Men. He's already starting doing work on Batman. And then he goes into Warren Publishing and they say, hey, can you do a story for us in our new book, Vampirella? Okay, do you want us to do Vampirella? No, we want you to do a side story. Like he's past that.
Yeah.
He's at the point that he's past that. But he still does it. That's the sign of a true creator to me.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm. And not to mention, it's a great Vampirella cover by Frank Frazetta. What's to hate, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But it just boggled me when I saw it because I remember hearing about, oh yeah, Neal Adams, Vampirella. I'm like, but he didn't do Vampirella. He never touched Vampirella in this book. But he's noted to be a creator within the book. So, and it's true, he's in the book, but he never did Vampirella in this book. So there's your little Easter egg for you.
That's right.
Now, here's a book that he definitely did work in, and that is Green Lantern 76. This came out in 1970 for DC Comics. Highest sale of this book was $20,400 at a 9.6 on November 17th, 2022. The last recorded sale value was $50, January 6th, 2025. And its fair market value of $245, very good. 7.5 at $408. This is an iconic Neal Adams cover, but more importantly, this is the beginning of the Bronze Age.
And who would have thought that Green Lantern and Green Arrow would make sense together?
They're both green.
Besides the green.
Well, that's what did it, right? I'm sure that's what it was. Let's just have the two green characters together.
Yeah.
But this book is relevant today as it was then. Because the same issues that it was dealing with then, we are still dealing with today. And I'm not going to get into the whole politics of it. That's not what the show's about. But all the issues, the social issues that they were dealing with at that time, this was the book that made Denny O'Neil and Neal Adams really put this into storytelling, in which this ushered in a new era of comics, what we call the Bronze Age today, where we're going to give you stories that are realistic. We're going to give you stories that you didn't think was something we got to talk about. We're going to go into topics that we would never have touched 5 years ago, 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And we're going to touch them now.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Great time, great stories, and this is definitely part of it for sure.
Mm-hmm. And also, what a great cover, man.
Yeah.
Worth every penny, if you ask me. Detective Comics 400. Back in 1970, DC Comics, this book, highest sale was $43,200 at a 9.8. That was on September 2021. Last recorded sale of this book was $68 at a fine. And fair market value of this book, $176 at a very good, and $1,050 at 9.0. This features the first appearance of Man-Bat. You know what's so funny is like the fact that they said to themselves, let's create a villain. Okay, you know, we've done all these villains. Yeah, but how about he fights a bat? You know, he's Batman. He's never fought a bat before. Let's make him fight a bat. And better off, let's make a Man-Bat.
Yeah.
Like, you know, this is one of those things that I'm sure they were socializing with each other. And for giggles, they come up with this character name.
They did a funny little bit on this on Big Bang Theory that was hilarious on Batman, Man-Bat.
Oh, yeah, Man-Bat, Batman.
Yeah.
I do remember that. I do recall that. Man-Bat is one of those characters to me that I like. I enjoy his story. It's a very tragic story. It's very lizard-based, right? So it's kind of the same story as the lizard. There's no real difference between it. What's interesting enough is that it was also the very first animated story. So when Batman the Animated Series debuted, the first story they did was the Man-Bat story.
Oh, yes, that's right. I just watched that the other day, probably about a month ago, I guess.
So, first appearance of Man-Bat, Detective Comics 400. You could get it for the low price of $43,000. Here's another iconic one, but not as expensive. Oh, technically, Detective Comics 405. This came out in 1970 for DC Comics. The highest sale of this book was 14,409.8. That was in 2022. Last recorded sale of this book was $8 at a fair, poor condition. Fair market value of this book is at $121. 8.0 is at $350. This is the first team appearance of the League of Assassins, which is going to be a big part of Neal Adams and Denny O'Neil's story moving forward.
Yeah, and that's a key group as well, and that's shows in the value of the book. And again, I'm just amazed that you can get this book in a 9.8. I mean, look at the black dark cover, and it's 1970. Wow, that's impressive.
Well, even the image that we have here, it's an image of a copy that's not that great because I can even see the creases on the image.
Yeah.
So that's how hard it is. But it is a book that does exist in the 9.8. I'm sure there's not that many copies of it, but it exists. Right. But $8 for a fair copy? Sure, I'll take it.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%.
Someone got a good deal on it just as a reader copy, just to say you have the first appearance of the League of Assassins. That's good. Speaking of major books,
damn.
Batman 227 paying homage to Detective Comics. 1970 DC Comics. The highest sale value of this book was at $42,000 in 9.8. Speaking of 9.8s, right? Last recorded sale of this book was $385. Fair market value is $289 at a very good. $1,012 at a 7.0. This is an iconic cover of Neal Adams inspired by Detective Comics 31 that came out in 1939. I absolutely love this cover.
This one I've always wondered, because I see it pop up all the time, and I've always wondered what the huge draw is it. I like it, but I kind of like a lot of the other ones a little bit more. I definitely can see why it's so popular, but it is interesting for sure.
It's the way Batman is. This is Neal Adams telling you, because remember, we're coming off the Batman TV show, the Adam West TV show. We're coming off of that. Right? So the TV show was 1967 and the show's been out for 3 years. So now the show's gone. And now the comics are back to, okay, we want to make Batman the most serious character we could make it. Well, we're going to put in Neal Adams. We're going to get Denny O'Neil to write on it. So they were committed to that. By doing this cover, this again, we're talking about the 70s here. So this very much has the elements of the horror comics of that era too.
Yes,
right?
Definitely.
It looks and it feels the same way. You throw in Batman, you put in the demon of Gotham's mansion you put that in there, and you got yourself an instant seller. And more importantly, if I wish I was around during this time just to pick up these books. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Just to be around to see them in a newsstand and just oh, look at this. This is gorgeous. This is amazing. This is by far my favorite Neal Adams cover to date. Let's take a look at our next book here. Another iconic one, Superman 233. This came out in 1970. Highest sale was $5,520 at 9.6. That was in 2024 in April. Last recorded sale of this book was $72. Fair market value of this book is $77. An 8.0 is scored for $253. It's an iconic Neal Adams cover.
Yeah, and just the chain breaking and all of that. I love this cover. The background with the colors, so good.
This is a cover that for many people is their poster. It's a poster.
Yes.
It's a straight up poster. And it turns out that Neal did not like this cover. He did not like it. He was not a fan of it. And I honestly don't understand why. Maybe because there's not a lot of action to it and he likes action. But I never really got to know why he didn't like this cover. Yeah, but it is very affordable, I will say.
Yeah, definitely. Still like $77. Pick it up, 72. It's reasonable.
Yeah. Another classic. This is Batman 232 back in 1971 for DC. Highest sale value was another $42,000 at 9.8, and that was in September 2022. Last recorded sale, however, was $385. That was in January 2025. Fair market value of this book is $289, and a very good, while a 7.0 is going to cost you about $1,012. This is the first appearance of Ra's al Ghul, second appearance of Talia al Ghul. It's worth noting that Talia did make her first appearance in Detective 411.
I love the background of this cover. I think it looks great.
Yeah. When I decide Robin must die, he dies. Drago got nothing on Ra's al Ghul, does he?
Yeah.
Poor Robin gets killed all the time. They just love killing him off or something. But seeing this cover, okay, 10-year-old you is going to the comic book shop. It's 1971. You're 10 years old. Going to the comic book shop. You want to pick up a comic book here. You got some choices. You got some Batman. You got some Superman. You got some Spider-Man. You got some X-Men books. Which one you going to pick up?
That's a tough call. I'd have to see them all, but when you're like, I just loved the art when I was a kid. So anything that drew me in, like this I would probably grab this. That X-Men cover would be hard to beat if it came out at the same time, though.
Yeah, it didn't. So X-Men was kind of already in their reprint stage, I think. Going back to Batman 232. First and foremost, one of the things that was very interesting about this era of comics was the risks they were taking. You have a gun being shot at to Robin, the kid.
A kid, yeah.
And it says in the comic, on the cover, he dies. The reason why this is the one that's going to be picked up as opposed to the other books is because you generally don't know if they're going to kill off Robin.
Right. Yeah, back then, a lot of times back then, the cover told a part of the inside of the book.
And you knew the scene was happening.
Yeah.
Right? And it actually gives Ra's al Ghul the momentum to being a top tier villain, because we're talking about a brand new villain. At this time, Batman already had a major rogues gallery. Ra's al Ghul just went right on top.
Yep.
As being, oh, this guy's a serious villain. Like, he's killing Robin. So, big deal then.
Yep, for sure.
Let's take a look at our next book in our list. Just 2 issues later, we get Batman 234, 1971 for DC Comics. Highest sale was $7,800 at 9.8. That was in April of 2024. Last recorded sale of this book is $600, and this was done this week. $118, very good. $475 for 8.0. This features the first modern appearance of Harvey Dent, otherwise known as Toof Face.
It's just, I just love this cover. There's just so much good stuff on it. Like all of the writing, like it's bigger. It's only 25 cents. Like everything there is just really great. And the drawing of Toof Face's head is really good too.
The other thing that you mentioned with the trade dress, like Batman with Robin, the Teen Wonder. Yeah. He got upgraded to Teen because he was part of the Teen Titans.
Right.
It took him this long to bring Toof Face back?
Yeah. I mean, amazing, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Right. He's just one of those characters, again. I never knew about Toof Face until much later, until the cartoons. And that's because they never featured him in the TV show. He was never in the TV show. They had a character that was supposed to be, I guess, the equivalent to Toof Face, which I think was No Face was his name. But for some reason or another, they were scared about getting Toof Face. Not Neal Adams and Denny O'Neil's like, no, we're bringing him back. We're bringing him back now. Yeah. That's what this was.
They probably didn't want a bunch of kids going around deciding things with coins or something like that.
Oh, that would have been so much fun, wouldn't it? Green Lantern 85. This came out in 1971. Highest sale was 11,409.6. That was this week. Last recorded sale was $90. Same day, actually. Fair market value of this book is at $103. $310 at a 9.2. This is a groundbreaking arc tackling drug addiction that paved the way for realistic, relatable comic stories. This was a big one.
Yeah, for sure. This book opened up a lot of things for comics and also for, people to take comics more seriously, as well. And it's just a iconic cover, homaged, parodied, all of it. Just, good.
Marvel Features #1. Now we're going to kick into some Marvel books. 1971, this came out. Highest sale of this book is $9,000. It is 9.8. And last recorded sale was $135 at an 8.0. A PGX copy.
Wow.
For $135. What a difference, right? $95 for a fair, a fine copy, $282 for an 8.5. This is the first full team appearance and origin of the Defenders, which includes Doctor Strange, the Hulk, and Submariner. Note, this is a Neal Adams cover. He did not do the interiors.
Look at the action on that cover.
Mm-hmm.
You get all the characters, going on. Backgrounds. It's great. Mm-hmm. Really well done.
Mm-hmm. And it's worth noting that this is not the first time they are together in the comic book. So they have worked together in the past, but this is the first time they're acknowledged as the Defenders, which I would love to see a live action version of the Defenders because we now have all the characters. They're all in. We're going to get Silver Surfer in pretty soon, I'm sure. But we could get this group in immediately.
Yeah, for sure. And I was this is one of the first team books once Ghost Rider was brought in. That kind of, like that team with the Hulk and Ghost Rider and Doctor Strange and everything. Mm-hmm. When I saw that as a kid, I was like, wow, that's so cool. They all know each other.
Yeah, right. But what I really like about the Defenders, unlike the Avengers, the Defenders were a group of guys and girls later on. They just didn't care about each other. Yeah. Like Submariner and the Hulk always were at odds with each other. Submariner always called Imperious Rex and stuff like that. Yeah. and Doctor Strange was doing his best to get them to work together. So the Defenders are a ragtag group, to say the least. That's probably a good way of looking at it. Yeah. I love the Defenders. Going back to Green Lantern 87. Now, this is 2 issues later from the one that we just saw. This came out in 1971 for DC Comics. The highest sale of this book is at $10,800 at 9.8, which was recent. Last recorded sale of this book was at $500 at a 7.5. Fair market value is $229 at a very good, while the $564 for 8.0. This is the first appearance of Green Lantern John Stewart, who by many is Green Lantern. A lot of people consider him Green Lantern more so than Hal, even though we all know Hal is the true Green Lantern. But is he? Because Alan Scott got a little claim to that too.
Yeah, and just think like you mentioned 2 issues ago, and I don't know what the issue was before, but I'm sure it was really good too. They're just month after month punching out page after page of amazing stuff. And you can tell by the top corner, it's like, and it's not like a 26-page book or 32-page book they're doing every month. It's 48 pages.
They're thick. They're thick books. And just to give you insight, 86, it's the second part to the Spitty story.
Right.
So,
and then they boom right into this. Like, it's amazing, really.
Yep. And it's all with social issues because they're dealing with race in this issue. There's this real popular panel of, you know, you defend the different types of aliens and stuff like that. But what about the black people here? Which is like, boom, just like moment of truth for Green Lantern.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. And now in Marvel, he's getting his horror itch taken care of in Marvel. 1971, Marvel Spotlight #2. Highest sale was $12,000 and 9.8 back in August of 2022. Last recorded sale was $219. That was recent. Fair market value of this book is at $170 fine, $351 at a 7.0. This is the first appearance of Werewolf by Night.
This, you know, again, there's a lot going on the cover, but it tells you everything that you need to know. And if you look at the cover and you like werewolves, you're buying this book.
It's not the first horror comic he does for Marvel. More importantly, it's Werewolf by Night, so we all know it's supposed to be like it's their take on the Universal monsters, of course. So we'll see some more coming very soon. Obviously, a 9.8 for $12,000, that is a lot. But to get a fine at $170 for a character that already has appeared in the MCU, it's not bad. No,
very reasonable price, and it's an older book too. So, you know, the black border is going to be tough, but with the red, it's going to show those spine ticks a lot.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a good book to have for sure.
What about this one? Tuma Dracula #1, 1971, Marvel Comics, $16,800 and 9.8, September 21. Last recorded sale of this book was $411 at an 8.5. And the fair market value of this book is $211 in the fine, while 8.5 is going to cost you $445. This is the first appearance of Marvel's Dracula, Frank Drake, and Clifton Grade. But let's face it, it's all about Dracula, and it's all about this cover. This is an iconic cover.
And if you went back to the late 80s, you could probably just trip over this book in different stores because it wasn't just a thing that it was Dracula. It was, you didn't think of it that way because you just didn't until recently, where it's like, oh, Dracula, well, there might be movies. Back in the day, you didn't think like that at all.
It's a book that it goes beyond comics because it's Dracula.
Yeah.
Right? It's not so much that it's a Marvel comic. It's because people love these characters. They love these we call them the Universal monsters, but they go further back than that. Dracula is just one of those characters that we see it with Mark Spear's monsters today, right? He's kind of like the lead of that story. People just love these characters.
Yeah.
And this is one of those books that I think today gets way more love than it did then. Way more love.
Definitely. I'd love to have a copy of this.
And it's a cool cover. It presents so well, too.
Yep.
Batman 244, 1972, DC Comics. High sale was $8,409.8. That was in April 2024. Last recorded sale was $275 at a 7.0. Fair market value of this book is $70 at a very good, and $362 at an 8.5. This is a battle of Batman and Ra's al Ghul. This also features an iconic panel of Batman kissing Talia al Ghul. Many people believe that this is the issue where we get Damien comes from this story. Even though there's actually another comic book that features how that happened.
Yeah, and I love this cover. My only thing is, like, how does he have Batman's pants when he has pants on?
Well, Batman has his pants on, so apparently he keeps 2 pairs of pants.
Right. Maybe he was wearing 2 pairs of pants.
Maybe, maybe it was a cold day in the desert, Sometimes you gotta bundle up. Here's another question I have. Why is Batman so hairy?
Well, he's a man.
Got a hairy chest, doesn't he?
Yeah.
And Ra's al Ghul was like enough to take it was enough for him to take off his whole costume, but he's like, I'm gonna just leave the cowl on him.
Yeah.
Because I want to keep him that way.
Yeah.
It's like, all right. Like, we're gonna fight bare-chested. We're gonna be bare-chested fighters.
That's right.
This is not one of his most iconics, but it's definitely an iconic. Check out that trade dress in the background, man. It's huge.
Yeah.
Another classic cover. This is Action Comics 419. The highest sale of this book was $15.98 at 9.8, and that was in April 2024. Last recorded sale of this book was $30, and the fair market value of this book is $37 at a fine, $1,223 and 9.8. It's just an iconic cover. It's when you think of Superman, a lot of times this is the image that comes to your mind.
Yep. Look, he's happy.
Yeah, there was a real big thing with them taking, copies of like cityscapes and stuff like that, like Xerox copies, and just doing the image on top of that. So, we see it a lot in Marvel. Marvel did a lot of them. DC said, we can do it too. And they did it with Superman here.
And it looks great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it definitely looks great here. The one that everybody has been waiting for. Batman 271, 1973 for DC Comics. Highest sale value of this book is $39,600 at a 9.8. And it sold back in November 2024. So not that long ago. That was about 2 months ago. The last recorded sale was this week at $26,000. So someone got a deal this week. It could be the very same book, believe it or not. $26,400, 9.8. Fair market value of this book is $260, very good. $955 at an 8.5. The key significance: it's an iconic Neal Adams cover, but more importantly, revitalized the Joker as a homicidal villain instead of a comic book villain. What can we say about this book that hasn't been said?
It tells you all right in Joker's face.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. It tells you the difference right there between him being a comical guy and being a crazy killer guy.
Mm-hmm. This is what, like, I did mention the other book is my favorite. This comes in a very close second. Like you said, everything you want about that you want and love about the Joker is here. And I love how it says in the subtitle, "Look out, Gotham, the Joker's back in town." They are saying we are making the Joker what he's supposed to have always been.
Yeah.
He ain't no stupid clown. He's not any other clown. This guy means business.
Yeah, it's very good.
I love looking at this. You know, it's just one of those books. It's been homaged a few times as well. We've seen plenty of homages to it.
Yeah.
But nothing beats this cover. This is such a good cover.
Very well done for sure.
When I saw the title of this book, I was perplexed, but that's the title. It's Limited Collector's Edition C56. It's 1978 DC Comics. The high sale value of this book was $400. Would you believe that? $400. Last recorded sales is $28. Fair market value of this book is $124. I did not have any information on slabs for this book. I'm sure they exist, but I don't have any information on slabs. It is the one-shot featuring a boxing match between Superman and Muhammad Ali. It's a classic wraparound cover by Neal Adams. More important to note is that in this cover, this wraparound cover, every single person that you see in outside of the ring is an actual character of some kind, whether it's fictional in the comics or real. Neal Adams decided that he wanted this event to really showcase all the people that were famous during that time.
Yeah, I didn't know that. And I think they just did a facsimile of this one recently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So if you did really want the cover, you can go get this as a reprint.
Yeah. You know, and it was so cool. The story is really cool because, you know, Superman versus Muhammad Ali, of course, Superman will beat him, right? Because it's a human versus Superman.
Yeah.
So what they did for the story is that they depowered Superman, which defeats the point of him being Superman.
Yeah.
It would make more sense to me if it was Muhammad Ali versus Batman, and then we'll see who wins.
Yes.
Right. But this is, you can't get more iconic than that.
No. Great cover.
I had to throw it in there. Captain Planet and the Planeteers, 1991 from Marvel Comics, is the highest sale of $100 at 9.6, and that was in December. The last recorded sale was $5. Fair market value of this book is $5 and $100 at 9.6. This is the first appearance of Captain Planet and the Planeteers. Now, if you note, we jumped from the 70s to the 90s. So I did not put any 80s comics in this list because, one, this list has been very long, and two, in the 80s, Neal Adams actually left Marvel and DC to pursue his own indie comics. This is where we get Bucky O'Hara. This is where we get Mystic and some other characters that he helped co-create it in Continuity Comics. Those books unfortunately, they don't have really significant value to him. So I decided, you know what? They exist. I'm letting you know they exist, but I'm not going to go over them in this list because it's such a long list. Instead, I decided to throw in this little Easter egg here for you guys because he did the cover for Captain Planet.
That's awesome. I just love it.
Yeah, he's like, yeah, I'll do it.
The green mullet, you can't beat it.
All-Star Batman and Robin, the Boy Wonder. Apparently, he got demoted to Boy Wonder. Issue number 8, Neal Adams 1 in 10 variant. This came out in 2007 for DC Comics. The highest sale of this book right now is at $135 at 9.8, and that was in November 2021. Last recorded sale of this book was $16, and that was just recent in December. Fair market value of this book is $18, $44 at a 9.8. What makes this iconic, obviously, is the merger of Batman and Joker. When I saw it, I said, okay, I don't know how I feel about it.
It's a I'd really like to look at this cover like up close, because looking at it further away like this, even when I zoomed in on my phone, it's one of those things where they give you the test and it's like, which thing do you see first? Do you see do you see two Wolverines or do you see Batman type of thing? And I like it because you have to look at it for a while to lock in on one face or the other. But there's a lot going on there for sure.
Yeah. Well, he did manage to do something with the eyes. Especially that one eye, that Batman's one eye that he shares with Joker. So there's a little bit of, like you said, like a Rorschach painting into it, right?
Yeah.
I first see Joker, and I see Joker not as the villain, but like the Jack Napier character, the mobster, or the comedian, the failed comedian. That's what I'm seeing in this image. I see the attempt. I'm not sure how successful that attempt is, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I see the same. Like I can get Batman out of it by more going towards his nose and that, but it is a great concept though, for sure.
It falls under iconic as well, right? You'll remember this image.
Yeah.
Keep in mind, this is the 1 in 10 variant. There is a convention exclusive variant, which is slightly more defined in its style because they added the blue into it, where now Batman is colored in blue, so you kind of can see him a little bit more. I don't I kind of like the black and white by itself. I don't think the blue strengthens it. It just kind of makes you see it a little bit more. But the convention exclusive came out at the same time. The highest sale of this book was at $5.99, just short of $600 at 9.8, and that was in December of 2020. Last recorded sale of this book was in December at $125. Fair market value of this book was $51 near mint, $380 at 9.8. This is the blue variant that was a giveaway at MegaCon and the Austin DC Retailer Conference. There are only 200 copies that we know of. So it falls on the rare side.
Oh, for sure. And if you love that cover, then you'll try to find this one for sure.
Yeah, again, $125 for a book that only has 200 copies.
Yeah.
That's not bad.
Nope.
So there you have it, guys. That is your Neal Adams Creator Spotlight. We hope you enjoyed this spotlight. Tell me, how many books you have in his collection? Are there any books that you are now planning to seek out? Let me know in the comments. There's a lot of books I plan on trying to get myself. But this is an iconic, legendary creator. I'm happy we did it. Can't wait to see the next guys that we're gonna do. But I'm really happy that I had a chance to do Neal Adams Creator Spotlight.
Yeah, great work on that too. Very well done.
Thank you. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more comic content. Check out these other videos for even more insight, and I'll see you at the next one. Excelsior.